In this module, we're going to explore some of the different tools that are available in Python for working with web data. Before we get started, eventually we're going to be working with the Beautiful Soup package, and there happens to be a Beautiful Soup plugin for IPython Notebook, so I think it's worth getting that installed. And so you can use this command right here to install the package. And then you can load these extensions into your notebook. And I'll highlight some of the places that we use that eventually. Okay, so working with web data, there's a few good things to know. Not so much if you're working in this IPython notebook environment, but there is a module called Web Browser that opens pages in the default web browser, and if a graphical web browser is not available, like you're connected through a terminal connection to a remote computer, then a text-based browser will be used. But this is something that I've used in the past as a way of, it's a kind of a cheap and easy way to visualize data if you render it in HTML or an XML format. And so the library is web browser. You can open up, pass it a URL, and the default, you have to check the settings. It might be different from computer. You can have it open into a new window or a new tab. In this case, I'm just going to open the python.org website, and it's going to open in a new tab on the window. Oops. Well, that didn't do what I thought it was going to do. I guess that's because you see it opened up. This is the new Python page, and so that's what that opened. I guess the issue is I'm running this module in Opera web browser. My default web browser is Firefox, so it opened it with the default web browser. All right. Okay, so Python has lots of useful tools for working with web data. The problem is that it is an unorganized mess. There are multiple libraries that are all kind of dealing with the same purpose, and the different things are split between the three. So the three main ones that we'll be concerned with are URL parse, URLlib, and URLlib2. And I'll go through a quick highlight of each of them. So URL parse defines a standard interface to break uniform resource locator URL strings into its component parts, the addressing scheme, network location, path, etc. And then to combine the components back into a URL string and to convert a relative URL to an absolute URL and so forth. So methods for breaking web address into components are URL parse and URL split. And we can do some examples here. So I'm importing URL parse and URL split, and then I'm creating this web address, and I'm passing it to the parser. And you can see here we're printing out the scheme, which in this case is HTTP. It could be GET, it could be HTTPS, it could be FTP, and so on. I'm asking it what port's being used. In this case, it's going to be port 80. Here's get the whole URL, and here's the host name, which is the base part of the address here. We can do a similar thing with URL split, where in this case I'm creating a web address that includes a query. So in this case I'm at the Python docs, and I'm creating this query that has URL parse and some other things. So we can execute this. And so this is the query that was built, which is everything following that question mark on the search HTML. And you can see that there was no explicit port specified, and so the port comes out as none. Okay, the URLlib package. This module provides a high-level interface for fetching data across the World Wide Web. In particular, the URL open function is similar to the built-in function open, but accepts URLs instead of file names. There's going to be a similar thing in the urllib2. So urllib2 is a module defines functions and classes which help in opening URLs in a complex world, basic and so on. So let's explore a little bit of how to use this. So I'm going to import urllib2 and I'm opening the web browser. I think that I'm going to not use the web browser here. Instead, I'm going to, well, okay, so let's go through this. So, I'm going to create a URL open for the utah.edu website, and so this fn can be used just like a regular file object. So I'm going to read in the contents of the page into the variable Python text, and then I'm writing it back out there. And I was going to read that with the web browser, but we can just do the display HTML Python text and display this directly in our IPython notebook. You can see that we're getting the basic contents of the page, but we're missing, we don't have access to the CSS files that are defining the look, and so it's quite different than what we're seeing if we open it up on the